shedding the light over one of the most successful, glorious revolutions in Egypt's history, the July 1952, 23rd of July revolution. Of course, that was a turning point in the life of every Egyptian back then. Why? Because it had fundamental changes. Of course, dismantling the royal regime, the kingdom, removing it, eradicating it entirely, and removing the king. And then, of course, a whole new democratic regime was effected, and a lot of achievements were taken by this revolution. And every time we mark this day in our calendars, we commemorate this event, the July 23rd revolution, a turning point in our history. Why, on the political level, we have so many achievements. We have the nationalization of the Suez Canal, of course, and how Suez Canal was under the control of foreign entities, and on top of all, most importantly, the inauguration of the High Dam, or the erection of the High Dam. In its own self, or in its own right, the inauguration of the High Dam changed the course of economic and political life in Egypt. This needs episodes and episodes of Good Morning to talk about the inauguration of the High Dam. It has changed the life of every Egyptian. It has changed our mainstream of thinking. It has changed our life for development, in the sense of development, in the sense of producing energy, in the self of so many facets that we could take hours and hours to talk about. Also, on another level, restoring the dignity of the Egyptians back then, at that time, because at the time there was a king, there was also the British occupation, and Egyptians used to feel that they were guests at their own countries, inside their own countries. It was good. It was true that there was an Egyptian king and an Egyptian monarchy and all that, but the British occupation was prevailing back then, and people weren't feeling that patriotic sense, in the sense of that they did not own their own lands, they did not own their own businesses, they did not own, I mean, most of the revenues of the country went to the occupation, not to Egyptians, and to only rich people. And there was a lot of gap between standards in society. There was capitalism, a huge bulk of capitalism, and in a tiny corner there was the low-income bracket. That gap remained, that huge gap between the two brackets remained vague and remained empty, and this was one of the main reasons for the revolution. The other reason also was the possession of lands were not for the Egyptians or for the people, the people in villagers. It was for the capitalism. The very rich people owned a huge number of lands, and no one was allowed from the villagers to own his own land, which was another reason for the revolution. The 23rd July revolution came, and it corrected all those misconcepted norms in society. It restored dignity, it restored the independence of Egyptians, and also the freedom that was lost at the hands of the aggressive colonization. Also, the control of a government in Egypt was not there. So ever since 1952 revolution, the 23rd of July, an Egyptian government was formed, and a democratic regime was formed. Of course, it took them some time to form an Egyptian regime with a president and all that, but then a government was formed, and it was 100% Egyptian, and the removal of the monarchy forever, and also they forced the king politely to step down and leave it for an elected president, and leave it for the Egyptians And of course, the evacuation agreement, the very popular evacuation agreement, was signed, as we remember. Why do we say that, or we take a flashback into those highlights back then? We commemorate that with pride. We commemorate that with gratitude to the three officers, the group of officers who carried out this glorious revolution. On top of them was back then Officer Gamal Abdel Nasser. He wasn't present yet, and also Officer Mohamed Anwar Sadat, and Officer Mohamed Naguib, and other glorious names. All respect to every single Egyptian officer who carried his life over his shoulder and took it to free Egypt from the monarchy and bring it down, asking the king to step down and removing it with a government, with a free government. Also, like we said, the evacuation agreement was signed after almost 70 years of occupation, which was a final glorious step. Also, when we remember the 23rd revolution, we remember building the Arab nationalist movement to work for the liberalization of Palestine. We're talking about almost 70-something years commemorating this revolution, and believe it or not, Egyptians, they have it in their heart. Even where they were attaining their own revolution, freeing themselves and bringing and colonization, they had Palestine in their heart, and they were thinking of to unite as Arabs and as Egyptians to stretch their hands for liberating Palestine. So our bond with our Palestinian brothers and sisters has years and years and decades to go. It will never be eradicated, and we will always stand for the Palestinian rights and for their eternal right in attaining Jerusalem as the capital for Palestine, because this is the historical rights and according also to the international agreements. Of course, when we talk about the 23rd of July revolution, we talk about a leadership. It was not only just a revolution, because so many countries, when we look over history, we can see a lot of, every country had a revolution at some date in history, in their history. But this type of revolution, the 23rd of July revolution, was an iconic one. It was a very successful experience as a revolution for many countries. Why? Because it motivated them to take positive steps towards democracy, positive steps towards their own best interest, and it was iconic in the sense that other countries followed the footsteps. And we remember from those countries Yugoslavia under Tito, and we also remember India under Nehru, and we can never also forget the forming of the non-aligned movement that made this era very popular. And also the signing of the Eastern Arms Deal, and that was in 1955, which was like 4 years or 4 years after the revolution, or three, or almost. Why this was very important as a highlight in history for us and for Arabs, because this was considered a turning point for Egyptians and for Arabs to break the global arms monopoly. Back then there was a global arms monopoly, and even right now it's amazing that history sometimes is repeated or is similar. Today, or in our era, we broke the arms monopoly, and we are manufacturing our own arms here in Egypt, and we have now avoided to stretch our hands to other countries, Western countries, to ask for arms or buy or waste our national income for buying arms. And we are manufacturing the aviation, the aviation arms, and we were manufacturing lots of our equipment, military equipment, 100% Egyptian made. And also, what characterized this back then, this particular era or decade, that there was a very popular call for the first African-Asian People's Solidarity Conference that was held in Cairo in 1958. The importance of this conference is that it traces or reflects how Egypt have always been respecting solidarity, integrity, privacy of the peoples, respecting races, and respecting every political characteristic for each country. Do not interfere in other countries. Stood against discrimination, stood against the racism, stood against gender inequality. All those values Egypt stood for, and Egypt until this very moment is speaking, and the very clear evidence for this reality is the 17 goals of the sustainable development map that we're following under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah. This stands for the same goals of this particular conference. We're going to go over to a report and we'll come back to you, so stay with us.
The July 23rd revolution is considered a turning point in the history of the nation because of the great, unparalleled achievements it brought about in several fields: political, cultural, educational, economic, and social. The revolution's achievements were not limited to those areas only, but also made unforgettable achievements at the Arab and international levels. The most important of these achievements was the proclamation of the Republican system and the appointment of Major General Mohamed as the first president of the Egyptian Republic on June 18, 1953. The July Revolution is the will of the people carried out by army officer leaders who were called the free officers for several reasons, either economic, political, or social. The revolution broke out and resulted in unparalleled achievements in many fields, some of which can be briefly mentioned. In the political field, the Suez Canal was nationalized. The evacuation agreement was signed for an occupation that lasted for more than 70 years, and control over the rule of Egypt after the fall of the monarchy and forcing King Farouk to abdicate the throne, and the monarchy was abolished, which led to the establishment of the Republican system. In the educational field, the achievements were represented in the establishment of research centers and the construction of 10 universities instead of only 3, and the approval of free public and higher education, in addition to doubling the higher education budget. The cultural side at that time also received abundant luck from the revolution's achievements. An academy was established that included institutes for theaters, cinema, ballet, and music, and worked to sponsor antiquities and museums. Films were also produced based on stories of authentic Egyptian literature.
ثورة يوليو المجيدة. الثورة دي قام بها الجيش المصري في الوقت ده. الجيش اتحرك في الوقت ده برجال شرفاء عظماء عشان يلبي طموحات الشعب المصري. نوجه التحية لرجال ثورة مصر. الرئيس الراحل محمد نجيب.
يا ولاد بلدي يا ولاد بلدي انا هتكلم كده بالبلدي يا ولاد بلدي يا ولاد بلدي، انا هتكلم كده بالبلدي بقى بالبلدي. احنا يا جدعان ثورتنا ثورة جدعان، بقى بالبلدي احنا يا جدعان ثورتنا ثورة جدعان. جدعان صم في عز العمر، جدعان صم في عز العمر، قاسوا تعبوا وشربوا المر. لكن قد ما تعبوا كتير حققوا نصر ومجد كبير، وده كله بعزم وتدبير، وده كله بعزم وتدبير. ابو خالد
الرئيس الراحل جمال عبد الناصر الرئيس الشهيد أنور السادات. كل سنة نحتفل بذكرى ثورة يوليو.
Welcome back once again. Very delighted to be having here with us in the studio Major General Mohamed Shahewy is former Chief of Staff of Chemical Warfare and member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Good morning, General
Good morning,
Mohamed. Let us real fast before we go to the press talk about the foundation for such a glorious revolution after how long? 74 years? We're commemorating how long? 70-something years, and we're still paying every respect to every single officer who took us to that revolution and effected what we effected. If you like to start off.
In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, I would like to greet you and the viewers of Nile TV Breakfast Show, and I am pleased to speak today about pivotal events in modern historical Egyptian history. And thank you very much for these important questions. We know that the July 23rd revolution has many significant role in the modern Egyptian. Firstly, we have what we call about a political perspective. From political perspective, we have here something to say. The revolution put an end to the era of monarchy and colonialism. In addition to that, Egypt regained its national independence and independent decision. In addition to that, the republic was declared, and the last British soldiers was evacuated from Egyptian territory. And from a social and economic perspective, I want to say that the revolution came to achieve a social justice. One of the most prominent achievement is the agrarian reform law, which abolished the feudalism and redistributed the land to the peasants. In addition, and the last point about the significance of 1952 revolutions, I want to say on the levels of regional and international levels that Egypt became the voice of the Arab world and the African continent.
A lot of other details we're going to be touching on. I'll just step in here and excuse you that we're going to go with our viewers to watch the press review, and we'll come back with General Mohamed Shahewy, so stay with us. once again, and we're very delighted to be having here with us in the studio Major General Mohamed Shahewy, former Chief of Staff of Chemical Warfare and member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. And we're still going to be embarking over the foundation of the 23rd of July Revolution and its implications over the life in Egypt, turning from monarchy to republic. And General Shahewy, getting into the core of this glorious revolution, there were implications for the transformation, of course, and there were agreements that were signed later on. Let's get into the transformation, which was the foundation for another shift into republic. How did this have an implication over political life in Egypt?
That's a very important question, and allow me to clarify it from three angles. Politically, there was corruption in the monarchy and the complete dependency on the British occupation. Politically, socially, there was what we call about injustice about the people and the class disparity due to the feudalism, where 1% of the peoples owned more than half of the Egypt's land, and the military, what we call about after defeat in Palestine in 1948, I think this was the last straw, and it proved that the regime can't able to defeat or protect about the state. Therefore, the revolutions came as a correction to all these conditions. And I want to concentrate about the very important pivotal role about the regional role of Egypt after the July 23rd revolution.
Can we, before we get into the regional role of Egypt, it's very important to ask you what were the defects militarily on the Egyptian army during the monarchy time, and how did it develop? Did the revolution have any implication or impact,
yes,
a positive one, over the Egyptian army?
Of course. We know that after revolutions, the July revolutions, July 23rd revolutions came to build a strong army and also to break the monopoly on weapons. For that reasons, Egypt make what we call about boosting and increase its military capability, and also the diversification of the military. Now we have weapons from east and west, from all. We have Mistrals and from France, and also Rafale, and a lot of submarines from Germany. For that reasons, our army became in the rank 12th around the world according to global power, and our navy is in the rank of the 6th, and our special forces in the first rank all over the world. For that reasons, after the revolution, Egypt built its strong army, and we know one of the lessons of the revolutions, of the July revolutions, was the strong army that is the sword and the shield of our country. And in this occasion, so we know that politically, and the political perspective, we know that Egypt was the voice of the Arab world and the African continent. And
just
after
like now, exactly.
And after under the leadership of Gamal Abdel Nasser, we know that a lot of liberation movement in Yemen, in Algeria, in South Africa, in Arab and Africa and the Asia countries also. For that reason, we call that there are a lot of significant points in these revolutions, and this course, Egypt now. What did Egypt now do? As July 23rd revolutions broke the monopoly on weapons and occupation, and the June 30th revolutions also broke about the monopoly on religion, about a special or certain groups. Egypt now broke the monopoly on technology. So Egypt
And
established
energy
and also technology. When we, from only 2 weeks, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi inaugurated the Strategic Command Center in new capital, which considered as the brain of the state and managed to operate all the civilian and military operation, any crises, any what we call about disaster, in addition to military operation. For that reasons, I think revolutions, July 23rd revolution, was the first step to build the first republic. And June 30th revolution is the beginning of building new republic. And now we have what we call new republics with modern technology that we, all of us saw it in the octagon or strategic command centers in new capital.
Right, very much so. Of course, totally agree. And all the respect to President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who have taken a second stage, a continuation of back then 1952 revolution, and taking us to an advanced era. But talking about the 1954 Anglo-Egyptian agreement that restored the Egyptian integrity, it was also a very important step back then.
We know that we have values of the July 23rd revolution. What is the value? The value is independence, justice, and dignity. And this is the first important in this revolution. And this transfer to the June 30th revolution, and is still now in our offers to build the new republic and establishing or carrying out thousands of mega projects all over the world. For that reason, I think as to build a strong country, you have to possess three axes. The first axis is awareness, because when awareness rises, you can fight what we call about rumors and fourth and fifth generation. And also you have to possess knowledge, because when knowledge rises, what we call about the industry and technology increase. And the last one, important axis to be a strong country, you have to work, because when work increase, the economy will be advancing. And when any country wants to be stable, it has to take care of the ordinary citizens and provide them with education and health care, because the ordinary citizen is the shield of this nation. And also, as we restored about national decision and independent will from July 23rd revolution, now from the awareness, work, and knowledge, we restored our strength in this country nowadays. In conclusion, I want to say the July 23rd revolution was not only a military movement to change the regime, but also it is a comprehensive national project to establish what we call about modern Egypt. And there is one slogan for this revolution. Revolution July 23rd and June 30th revolutions, and now there is only one slogan. The slogan is Egypt first. For that reason, we have to celebrate today about the anniversary of the July 23rd revolution.
Right, but also we don't need to wrap up before we talk about the implication of constitutional institutional reforms in only like 1 minute, because we're running out of time. I'm really sorry. The institutional reforms had an implication, of course, shifting into that transitional period of the July 23rd.
This has led us to what is the similarities between what happens in the past and then what happens today, what happens in July 23rd revolution and what happens in June 30th revolution. And I think there is a fundamental similarity between July 23rd revolution and June 30th revolution. This is what corrections, what we call about correcting the course. How come this? July 23rd revolutions, 1952, corrected the course against feudalism, colonialism, corruption. But June 30th revolution corrected the course against what we call about extremism, terrorists, and the attempts to hijack the country. For that reasons now, our offers to work, our offers to learn about the knowledge, our efforts to be awareness about the challenges that faces Egypt nowadays.
Right. On that note, Major General Mohamed Shahewy, former Chief of Staff of Cameroon Warfare and also a member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs, thank you very much for commemorating July 23rd here with us on Nile TV Good Morning Show. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and for our audience in Nile TV Breakfast Show.
Right. It's a real pleasure to have you. After the break, of course, Sahar is going to keep your company, and she's going to be bringing you or talking about the economic implications of the July 23rd revolution. Stay with us on the Good Morning Egypt show after the break with Sahar الطلاوي.
في زمن ساد فيه الفساد والاستبداد